All praises to our Father in heaven. Hallowed be his name. Y'all, it's Coach here, kind of doing another one of these impromptu shows. And I appreciate you guys tolerating the impromptu with all the errors and all that kind of stuff. Because what it allows us to do is, put up a lot of shows and cover a lot of, ground as far as the scripture is concerned. And we want to talk today about materialism. Now, we're looking in chapter 47, which is about materialism and spiritualism, but we're talking particularly about materialism, so this won't be a verse by verse. We're going to jump through here. Matter of fact, what we're going to do is we're going to hit Control Find. I thought I had it ready. Yeah. Control Find is going to find all of the times that the word materialism is here, and what we're going to do is we're going to jump down here and look at them. Okay. Now, in the first one, it says the repercussions of the present materialism. That's the name of the section. Then down here in verse 2, he says a spirit, when it lives adhering to truth, flees from materialism like someone fleeing from a plague. Okay. So you can imagine what this discussion is going to be about. A lot of people are going to click off because of materialism. Any threat to our stuff is going to make us, well, let's just go on and see what it says. I don't want to pick on anybody. For materialism is death. It is darkness. It is a prison and poison to the spirit. Now, this is the third testament of the Bible, guys. This is scriptural stuff. You know what I mean? And this is what the Bible is saying about materialism. Death, darkness, a prison. Okay, let's keep going. Materialism imposes itself as an immense obstacle in the road of the spirit's evolution. Now, see, that's why I wanted to do this. That's why I wanted to do this video. That's why I wanted to call this video something like, what is preventing you from getting raptured? Or what are preventing you from being changed at a moment? The answer is materialism. You look here in verse 5, it says it imposes itself as an immense obstacle, meaning materialism gets in the way. It's an immense obstacle in the road to spiritual or the spirit's evolution. And we learn in all of the scripture, all the way back to Jacob's ladder, that we have a spiritual evolution to make. And we appreciate the Father for giving us the third testament to clear some of that up. But let's keep going. Down here in verse 7, I guess it's the second part of verse 7, it says, they are the twilight, the final agony of the era of materialism, because there has been materialism in your science, your ambitions, and in your affections. There has been materialism in your worship. I don't know. I read it too fast. I know it's me that don't say. Well, maybe because I started in the middle of the verse. So let me back up. The trials that the world is passing through are the signs of the end of the era. Okay. Okay. They are the twilight, the final agony of the era of materialism. Oh, now see, I had to start there because it's talking about these trials are what's going to end our materialism. If you know anything about our eschatology, you know that our Father plans to shake the earth, toppling every building and every idol. Well, that's going to be the destruction of a lot of materialism, for real. And it's going to really end that era because we never recover from it. They are the twilight, the final agony of the era of materialism, because there has been materialism in your science, in your ambitions, and in your affections. Okay, because we put materialism into these things instead of it being science for the sake of science. We had it science for the sake of gaining stuff, making stuff. We wanted stuff, even our ambitions and our affections. He said there has been materialism in your worship, right? Talking about idols, talking about even the way we pray, and even going down to the church, and there's all that kind of stuff. Is material. If you can see it, if you can see somebody doing it, then it's a material kind of worship. To me in all your work. Sorry, what's going on? We're skipping a lot of stuff here. That's the chapter that we're on there. It's chapter 47 of the third testament of the Bible, chapter 47. But let's see where else it says. And it might be it. That might be the class. That's the same. That might be the class. But we wanted to bring that up because it is materialism, according to what we read there. It is materialism that is blocking our spiritual growth. It's stopping us from making. And I know this to be true even in my own personal life because, I find myself, that's the end of that chapter. Well, no, we're going to go on to the next one, spiritual gifts. We'll go a little faster. But materialism is a block even, for the best of us, because it's a distraction. Let's see, here's one right here. It says, when within the men generates and turn to evil that which was originally good, then the road becomes lost among materialism and sin. When within them men denigrate or degenerate, men degenerate to turn to evil. So when men fall to turn to evil, let me find a synonym for degenerate. I don't even think I know what it means. Debased, decadent, immoral, debauched, corrupt, perverted, wicked, moral. So when man has got so perverted and turned to evil, that which was originally good, okay, so they turn into good, then the road becomes lost among materialism and sin. All right. If men use war for ambitious and selfish ends, it is because of the materialism of those who promote those wars. Yeah, that's right. You know that there's two different families that fund the wars. Every time we've had a war, all the way going back to a long time ago, these two brothers, their families, one of them will support Germany, and the other one will support America. And they've been doing it the whole time. And they do it to get rich. Both of them get rich. Materialism has made the Eden entrusted to man into an inferno. Okay, so materialism changed it from Eden to hell. That's what it sounds like to me. Stuff. Let's see what else it says. In the meantime, mankind will still have to be touched by the elements of nature in different ways until they are convinced that superior forces exist and that man's materialism is highly inferior to those forces. And your guns and your weapons. Golly. Could you imagine them joggers out there in tanks and he just washing them away in flood waters and all? It's just like Pharaoh with his chariots. I mean, he said he's gonna use the elements to let him know who's the boss. The world has not learned my teaching and has sustained its idolatry and fanaticism. That is the reason that today passes through the great crucible, draining the cup of bitterness, for their materialism has distanced them from me. So it was because of the materialism that we were distanced from him, and now what does it say? Has it learned the teaching and has it sustained idolatry and fanaticism? So that's why we're gonna get the cup of bitterness. Talking about materialism, we just, like, doing what we do. You ask me what I am trying to do by manifestation spiritually among humanity in this time. I answer that what I seek is your awakening to the light, your spirituality, your unification. For in all the times you have been divided, for while some have sought the treasures of the Spirit, others have dedicated themselves to loving the wealth of this world. Spiritualism and materialism are always in conflict. Spiritualists and materialists have never been able to understand each other. Let me say that again. Spiritualists and materialists have never been able to understand each other. Right? So you understand that because you go around your neighbors and they think you poor, right? They think you ain't got nothing. You want to talk on that? I got to give you the mic. Dude? Here, allow you right here.
Hey, y'all.
Y'all, welcome Stacey to the show, y'all.
Well, it has to do with money, and we always say that money is the replacement for the father to a lot of people. But I was reading or listening to the Sermon on the Mount, and the Messiah said that you cannot serve two masters. Either you will love one and hate the other. You cannot serve money and the Father. So money is a master, because he said you can't serve two masters. He gave the Father as one master and money as the other master. So money is a master that will take over your life, and it comes in the form of materialism, things, and of that nature.
All right, very good. All right. Thank you very much. Talking about materialism. And we appreciate Stacey talking on materialism, and we're going to look a little bit more on the Third Testament, what it says about materialism. We're going to wrap it up. Let's see. Get right along. Here's another one. At the injustice of men, the waves of materialism shall rise up like an angry sea, the sea of pains, desperation, and anguish. Wow. Waves of materialism? No, I haven't made it this far in our Bible study, so I haven't thought of waves of materialism. That's interesting. Waves of materialism. We think of the tribulation as being waves of anger or waves of hate, waves of trouble, and even, a few water waves gonna come through there too. But I haven't really thought on waves of materialism. Man, okay, let's look right here, 38. Man has descended deep into an abyss, and even to their conscience has accompanied him. And even there, the conscience has accompanied him, waiting for the propitious moment to be heard. Soon that voice shall be heard in the world with such great a force that you cannot imagine now. But it will make mankind come out of their abyss of pride, materialism, and sin, and be cleansed in the waters of repentance, and begin to evaluate themselves toward the path of spirituality. Talking about materialism, I'm looking at the Third Testament. The Spirit will arise and break the chains of materialism in order to proclaim its spiritual freedom. Wow. Look at that. Now, what chapter is that? The Spirit is going to do that? I thought it was going to be earthquakes and floods and such. We can find it. Look, the Third Testament of the Bible, guys. I hate to get lost. I'm going to keep going forward. I don't know what chapter that is. Verse 9, you may know that during these times it is very difficult to deceive humanity. The Spirit has awakened, and although they are lost in the materialism of their existence, they are sensitive to every spiritual manifestation, and if you cannot deceive your brethren, will you deceive your Father? Okay, so it's talking about the age we live in now, where people are awakening. Everybody has a little bit of an awakening going on, but what it's saying here, even though they're awake, they still kind of caught up in materialism. But you ain't gonna trick them. You're not gonna fool them. You know what I'm saying? Is because they are spiritually aware, and so they're very sensitive. Now, are they educating themselves properly? No. They're just kind of avoiding everything. Right, let's go. How can you invite humanity to reach such spirituality in an age of such materialism and confusion? Right. So we want to be raptured, and that's what we said was going to name this class. Was what's preventing us from being raptured or something like that? Well, you see right here, he said, how can you do it? How can you be spiritualized in this environment that we live in when materialism can bring us out of our spiritual nature? If you don't believe it, start praying, and you see if you can hold that prayer together when somebody comes in the room or starts moving around you or whatever. Try. I'm saying you all just normally just quit. No, actually try. Try to stay, in spirit-to-spirit communication, or do anything spiritual. It's hard for me to even do these shows, these classes. Sometimes if I allow myself to be caught up in the stuff that's going on around me, if it's always material stuff. Even a person is material. I can see him, I can touch him. It's material. And he says, how when we live in this age of such materialism? This is everything's material. Everything is about materialism. Clothes, shoes, phones, pocketbooks, cars, trucks, houses, Everything is materialism. How can and plus and then add confusion on top of this, where you have a bunch of people talking on the scripture, saying a bunch of different stuff, is a bunch of confusion. So how can you expect people to be spiritualized or be raptured or to be called away or changed when all this is going on? Yeah, this is why, guys. Materialism and confusion. This is what's blocking. And you say, well, I'm gonna let you decide how you gonna get rid of some of that. But yeah, key word is get rid of. Find the top of this verse. Humanity will come, and among them Thomas, represented by the science of materialism. Okay, now talking about the reincarnation of different spirits here. There's going to be doubting Thomas spirits with their eyes ready to scrutinize, and not only their eyes, but with their fingers to touch and to feel, and only in their way. Let me slow down. With their eyes ready to scrutinize. See, they just like Thomas said. Remember, Thomas is the one say, I ain't gonna believe it until I can see it with my eyes and touch it with my hands. Until I can put my fingers in the hole, I ain't gonna believe that he's come back. Well, that type of spirit is amongst man today, where they're just not going to believe that the Messiah is back a second time until they scrutinize, until they, what it says. Not only with their eyes do they want to see him, but with their fingers to touch, to feel, and only in this way will they be able to believe in my existence and the spiritual events that will occur to one after another among humanity, and to which men will bear witness, so as that the Thomas of the third era, the ones that are here now, can be overcome in his doubt and materialism by my love. So the doubting spirit. These would be people who love the Lord, otherwise love the Father and the Creator. But they've been preaching down at your churches. You know what I'm saying, and they're gonna change. They're gonna be raptured. They're gonna fall in line with the true believers or whatever. But right now they riding around in Lincolns. Right now they got big screen TVs that they congregation keep giving them. You know what I'm saying? I was in a church one time and they was talking about how the church gave the pastor a $600,000 car. It was at that point I didn't even know they made $600,000 cars. Anyway, let's go. I am teaching you so that you will withdraw from materialism, got to come out of it, and cease to be fanatical and idolatrous. Talking about church right here. Anytime he started mixing up materialism and fanaticism, that's church. And idolatrous, yeah, that's church, all of that stuff. But that's materialism too, like we talked about earlier. The idols, the almost everything you do. You think of yourself going to church, the first thing you think about is what you're going to wear. And it starts from there. And it ain't going to stop until you get back home. You're going to be caught up in materialism. And you're going to have a little bit of fanaticism, depending on, what church you're going to, and some, you're going to be idolatrous too, depending on what church you go to. For this, however, you must scrutinize yourself, putting materialism away from you each day. You got to do it every day. I guess you do it a little bit at a time, because I got this computer, it ain't gone yet. I got this phone in my hand, it ain't gone yet. You know what I'm saying? So, but a lot of stuff has gone. So, I guess you do a little bit at a time. No, actually, thinking back on what the scripture says is he purges you. I can't remember what book it is, but he says he takes away those things that are unnecessary and then leaves you with those things that you can then do some good with, right? So that's, I guess that's why you gotta, be careful. But you say it without feeling or understand it, because your materialism impedes you from feeling my presence in your being. So look at materialism. Look at what it's doing. Materialism impedes us from feeling his presence, right? That's true. That's true. You know what I'm saying? And then, I'm for some reason I'm thinking of even music, and maybe because music, when we play the radio and such, it could be a distraction. So is that I don't know. I'm having a hard time thinking of music as being materialism, because I can't see it. I can't touch it. But let's go on. Let's go on. Where's the top of this verse? That I had a top of it that don't make sense. Do not, in this era, imitate the Jewish people of the second era. Jewish people of the second era. Who is he talking about? Jewish people of the second era. The first era was Moses. The second era was the Messiah. So he's not talking about Jewish people at all. He's talking about Jews. not Jewish, Jew. And yeah, I know it's from the tribe of Judah, which also, which is where, we also included, the half tribe of Benjamin, and they would have been called Judah, and or who we now known as those bloodline Israelites, the bloodline, the people who still had the blood. And he's talking about the group that was around the Messiah. He's not talking about Jewish people. That would be later on. They didn't come till much later. Anyway, let's go on. Who from their traditionalism, conservatism, fanaticism, were unable to consume the bread brought them from the kingdom of heaven by the Messiah. Right? Because they were caught up in the real bread, the bread you make from wheat, the bread my wife is over here making on his table. They were caught up into that. So when he tried to give him the bread that he wanted to give them, they didn't understand. They wanted to see the bread, put the bread on the table. Who they have awaited for centuries and centuries, right? But whom when the time came, they were unable to recognize because their materialism did not permit them to see the light of truth, that he was the bread, the same bread that, were a part of the feast. It was just, he was what did he say? He fulfilled it. He fulfilled it. Okay, let's go on. The degree of spirituality or materialism of humanity can be measured by their form of worship. Okay, so you go in and you look at how they worship, yeah, and you can tell how sophisticated they are. Now, I knew this intuitively. I don't really tell anybody to intuitively stuff I know intuitively, but when I see it written down on paper, then I like to take credit for it. And yeah, what would happen is when you would go into a church that you've never been before, the first thing you do is you start looking around. There go an American flag there, and it has an eagle sitting on top, and then you start start from there. There's going some fake flowers. There go a cross on the wall. There's a image of a dude with long hair and a beard. I mean, you look around and you see what's going on, and as you witness this stuff, you realize that these people might not be as far along in their spiritual walk as they think they are. All right, then we're back at the beginning of the book, but we're going to keep going. The evidence that I come in spirit to communicate with humanity will not be accepted by all, in spite of the testimonies, because materialism will act as a blindfold of darkness for the eyes of some. Okay, so they ain't gonna recognize it. The materialism is going to be a blindfold, right? And I can see this in some of my family members, not all of them, but certain ones are blinded by their materialism. It's basically stopping them from seeing from seeing the Father, from recognizing anything spiritual, from embracing the law, everything. Some of them, even go for the whole deal, the belief that spiritualism is in conflict with, or let me see how the scripture puts it, that being in line or being obedient to the commandments of the Father absolutely means that you will be separated from your material stuff. They believe it. They believe that as soon as you read that Bible, you're going to lose your car, your house, and everything else. The next one down here says, Elijah prepares his multitudes, his legions, to combat the darkness created by ignorance. Now, like I said earlier, you guys, I appreciate you guys, listening to the impromptu, because, if you didn't, I would have to do a lot of editing and we got a lot of stuff to cover. We got a lot of stuff to cover and a lot of stuff to do. But, we were looking on this earlier in the book of the Dead Sea Scrolls. See, we haven't even gotten into the Dead Sea Scrolls at all. And where it was talking about the trumpet for the Levi and how they put on there the army of God, or and I wrote on mine the army of Yah. And you know what I'm saying? And then it looks here, it says Elijah prepares his multitude, his legions, to combat the darkness created by ignorance. Well, let's give a hoo-ha for the 144. Sin, fanaticism, and materialism of mankind. So I'll be hoo-ha for the 144. The combat. So his legions, he prepares his legions to combat materialism. Wow. I didn't realize that. So the 144 are going to be in combat to combat darkness. Oh, no. To combat the darkness created by the materialism. Now I'm with you. Now I understand. Now it makes sense. I was off. All right, y'all. Yeah. At least you know. I should let you know I'm sincere. Whatever the word says, I'm gonna go with that. I don't really care. You know what I'm saying? Whatever the word says, I go with that. You know what I'm saying? I'm just so, you know, I give the Father so much credit that it's so thorough. His word never makes mistakes. You know what I'm saying? That's why I can go with exactly what it says, because I haven't found a mistake yet, other than, you know, translation errors and stuff like that. I haven't found one single error in the scripture in 23 years of reading this thing. Verse 52. And so in order to be worthy of receiving and transmitting my divine thoughts, they had to struggle against materialism and the temptations of the world. So we're having a struggle against materialism. Why? In order to be worthy of receiving and transmitting divine thoughts. Look at that, guys. Because materialism, we can't even hear his thoughts. So I'm sitting here wondering, why in the world is it that I can't hear the Father talking to me? And sometimes it be desperate moments, desperate times where I'm like, Lord, please, you know, I feel like you're gonna starve to death sometimes. You know, you beg the Father, you know. And you cannot hear the answers, you know, you cannot hear the answers because of materialism. Materialism is blocking. That's what it says here. Materialism is blocking. That's why we're named this class, or we want to name this class. I'm not sure what the name is going to be at this point, but we want to name this class. The reason why we ain't getting raptured is because of materialism. This is why. It's blocking us. It's stopping us. It's holding us back. And the Lord just brought it to me about the dreams. A lot of people are having rapture dreams on materialism. People going shopping. People, you know, they see the light and they run back to their house and grab stuff. You know, it says don't try to find your stuff. And you know, that's what they're doing. They are coming down off the house and they're going back and trying to get their stuff. Materialism. Let's go on. And yet I tell you, there shall arise a people on the earth full of materialism and disbelief. What? Imagine that. I could tell you, I know where they at. But yeah, the Jewish community, those people who are recognized as the Jewish community by the UN and pretty much the rest of the world, will not accept any large groups of people of color who say they are Jews. Now, they'll accept anybody else. There's a lot of, you know, light-skinned, Caucasian or, people in their groups from all over the world, but there's been people out of Africa and people from all over the world that say, hey, we just found out that we Jews too, and we knew that we was Jews for a long time, and we want to be part of your group. And they're not letting them, any of them in. They don't even let them come down to the Temple Mount and pray and all of that stuff. These people that's what they're doing. They're full of materialism and disbelief, meaning they don't really believe in the Messiah or that much. You know what I'm saying? They still deny him. But they also want to deny you the right to call yourselves Israel. Yeah, they want to be Israel. You ain't Israel. They Israel. They Israel. Ain't nobody else Israel. They Israel. But let's go. When you have been spiritualized, so once we've been spiritualized, so apparently now we've gotten over that. We've been, at some point we do get over it, right? Because we've been spiritualized, right? According to this. And you find yourself with men who suffer and are desperate because they cannot have that which they desire in the world. You will see how their materialism contrasts with the elevation of my disciples. What? I don't understand. Let me slow down. Because they cannot have that which they desire in the world. When you have been spiritualized and you find yourselves with men who suffer and are desperate because they that cannot have that which they desire in the world. Okay, so you've been raptured now, or you've been spiritualized now, or you've been changed now. You've gotten over it, and you find yourself amongst those who have not. Okay, you will see how their materialism contrasts, as in, let's look up a synonym for contrast. It might help. I learned that from my wife, is to look up words. But it's differences or dissimilarities or distinctions, disparities, divergences, gaps, or, right? So when you see something different with, okay, you will see how their materialism differs with the elevation of my disciples. Their materialism contrasts with the elevation of my disciples. Maybe if I look up elevation. I don't know it all, guys. Oh, okay. Oh, no. I don't know what it means. I get the first part up there, but I don't know what the second part means. Y'all help me out, guys. Help me out. Leave comments. I ain't no expert. I just read a lot. Next. And, okay, this one up here. Make use of the time that you will have to hear my teachings, so that it may fill you with light and grace, so that you may advance firmly towards spirituality, and advance that you have not made because of having continued within a cult of materialism and error. Yeah, your materialism and error, meaning, it's all about this stuff now, guys. It's all about this stuff. And we ain't just talking about the necessities, like, everybody needs a pair of shoes on their feet. Everybody needs some clean socks. Everybody, we're not talking about that. Everybody needs a house. Everybody, pretty much needs a way to get around. Which could be, walking, but, some of us have to travel a little farther than others. But we take it too far. Big screen TVs, Nintendos, you know what I'm saying? It's just, the latest this and the latest that, you know what I'm saying? We take it a little far. So I would just say we take it too far. You have lacked courage to be spiritualist. Why? Because you thought you were going to lose your stuff. And have conceived a way of seemingly spirituality. And have conceived a way of seeming spirituality, mean you're going to church. You call it, I ain't gonna, because people will click off. He's talking about people going to church. They seem spiritual, or they seem to have, some spiritual, because they're going in there praying and worship, but, it's just a few hours a week. And then they get right back into materialism. And in fact, while they're down there in the church with the rest of those people, that is in fact what they're doing. Materialism. Listen to them, for they go in my name to offer to you the perfect prayer, to liberate you from the chains of materialism that bind you, and to help you attain the spiritual freedom that elevates you to me. Talking about the 144 and part of what their mission is. They're going to help liberate you. And it ain't that they're going to take your stuff from you. No. For they go in my name to offer you the perfect prayer to liberate you from their chains. The perfect prayer. That's how you're going to do it, through prayer. Wait a minute, how do you going to liberate? His prior materialism was transformed to a very elevated spirituality. Talking about Paul, see up there, Paul, verse 44. Paul, that's what he's talking about. His hardness became infinite tenderness. And thus the persecutor of my apostles made into the most diligent sower of my word. I'm talking about Paul, changed from material to spiritual. And what he's talking about here is how you use that as an example, of how he changed, of his change. He was raptured. Paul was raptured. It's longer than I thought. thought this whole book is about materialism. Then the peoples will begin to awaken to the spiritual life, to what is true and eternal, destroying the externalities and materialism of the different cults, to content themselves with seeking the essence of my law, talking about, the tribulation. This is what the tribulation will do. This is what it's going to do. It's going to destroy, the internalities and materialism of the different. He says it's going to knock down every idol. Every idol shall be toppled over. Well, SOS, yes, the cults. But they live in a time of materialism in which they try to put even the divine in material form in order to be able to see and touch it. Talking about the people who like idols and such. People who like pictures on the wall and all that kind of stuff. If you lose the sense of time while evaluating yourself in prayer, they will be an indication of spirituality. Since you, even for a few minutes, manage to go beyond time, that time which the slaves of materialism only use for their enjoyments or to increase their wealth. Materialism. For materialism are alive and the spirits navigate in darkness. You are in a world of conflicting thoughts and ideas where passions for materialisms are alive and the spirits navigate in darkness. Yeah. Wow. So even though the spirit is in darkness, but there ain't nothing helping our spirit to be aware of what's going on. All of our passions are around gaining stuff and getting more stuff. Good, just, and righteous, and continue to live a life filled with materialism and selfishness. Right? What is he talking about here? In that same manner, when you separate yourselves from that which is good, just, and righteous, and continue to live a life filled with materialism and selfishness, you will inevitably feel me more and more distant from you. Yeah, sin separates us from the Father. Well, this is talking about materialism separates us from the Father. Materialism and selfishness. Now, the Third Testament does talk a lot about selfishness because it talks about how doing charitable deeds is what brings us close to him. So the opposite must be true too. Doing non-charitable deeds takes us away from him. You will inevitably feel me more and more distant from you. Let's see. I have come again to humanity, and you have not sensed me, for I have presented myself in the spirit, and your materialism is great. Right? So we know that, he's presenting himself to us, but our materialism is blocking us. This is what prevents us from getting raptured. This is what's stopping us. Beyond the passions and the shadows of materialism, in order to hear the concert of God in your spirit. Oh, it is necessary to go beyond the senses, beyond the passions and the shadows of materialism in order to hear the concert of God in your spirit. Guys, we're talking about what blocks us from where we want to go, where we need to be, where we want to be, and that's closer to the Father or the Creator, or to be raptured, or take it away, or to be rapazzoed, or to be changed. I tell you that only he who is found in extreme grade of materialism or blind fanaticism could reject this light without his spirit being moved. I mean, you're hearing this, guys. It would have to be him that, is so, and the thing about materialism, they clicked off so long ago, they ain't even here no more. And unless somebody got them tied to the chair, they don't want to hear nothing about them having to lose their Gucci purses and they sunglasses and they stuff. Man, no. You better not lose them sunglasses. Let's go on. Thus you live in a time of materialism and love for the world. Remember, he said, don't have no part with this world. Yet the light of my truth has come to you to dissipate the darkness of the night of a time that has already passed, announcing by the light of its dawn the arrival of a new era in which the Spirit will receive the illumination of my teachings. Thus you live in this time of materialism, though, and love for the world. So love for these things of this world. When he talk about this world, he's talking about worldly possessions, things you could touch, feel, see. He's talking about the American dream. You have everything. Well, I guess the American dream, to have everything. In the midst of that battle, it seems as though a strange and malevolent force is inducing you at each step to distance yourselves from the struggle, inviting you to continue on the path of materialism in use of your free will. And yeah, it seems as though there's a strange, malevolent force. What does malevolent mean? Or malevolent? I can't even pronounce it. Malicious, spiteful, wicked, nasty, mean, unkind, vindictive, or malign. Yeah. Bad, generally, yuck. But materialism. For he who knows how to prepare, knowing how to prepare is the scripture. The praying is that's what he means by prepare. He ain't talking about going down to Walmart getting batteries and water. I am visible and tangible and present everywhere. In contrast, for he who does not process sensibility because of materialism has hardened him. He barely understands that I exist and feels me to be immensely distant and impossible to be felt or seen in any form. Talking about materialism. Can't even see him in any form because of materialism. Man, he has a lot to say about materialism. We ain't even got back to where we started from yet. Humanity has traveled much of the path of life on this earth in open battle between the conscience, which has never quieted, and the flesh, which wishes to make the materialism its worship and law. So we want to make materialism what we worship and our law. We want to turn it into what we obey, and we've done so. That's what it is. That's what we obey now. You don't believe it? Let there be a threat to one of your utilities at the house, lights, water, cable, whatever. You know what I'm saying? You gonna pop up and you gonna go get it. You think you're gonna lose your car? You gonna go get it. You know what I'm saying? Folk can owe you money from now to whenever, but you let somebody threaten to repossess their car and see how fast they cough up the nuggets. You know what I'm saying? And it moves them. Your love might not mean much to them, but that car is going to get them to come up with what they owe. They're going to pay. They're going to pay what they owe. Although it is also more difficult for the slaves of materialism to perceive it, nevertheless, the effect which is exerted spiritually by the thoughts and evaluated deeds is great. However, men who find themselves distanced from others by selfishness and distanced from spiritual life by materialism that they have allowed themselves to be wrapped in today are not prepared to communicate with others by means of their thoughts. Talking about telepathy. How about you have the opportunity to use telepathy? Johnny, you know what telepathy is? Telepathy is your ability to talk to people without using your mouth or body language or sign language or anything. You believe you have that ability? You believe you could talk to your grandma right now without picking up a phone?
I don't think I do.
You know why? Why? Materialism. It just says it right here. Let me read it for you again. It says, however, men and little girls like you. I'm seeing what you're going to do with that egg. I've been looking at the eggs this morning. I saved it because the things they don't glean the pot, but you better not throw it away. However, men who find themselves distanced from others by their selfishness and distance from spiritual life by the materialism, so that's two things, that they have allowed themselves to be wrapped in today, are not prepared to communicate with others by means of their thoughts. That's telepathy. So selfishness and materialism stops you from telepathy. Now you know. And what did the guy say? What did G.I. Joe say? And knowing is half the battle. Let's see. He who does not know how to find the truth contained in my lessons may even affirm that this doctrine does not lead to the same end as the teachings of Jesus. Spirits blinded by misinterpretations or confused by religious fanaticism may not quickly understand the truth of these revelations, but must travel a road of trials to quit themselves of materialism that prevents them from understanding and complying with my precept that teaches you to love one another. Materialism does that. That's a lot to say, but the whole thing is about materialism. He starts off talking. He says, those who trust contained in my lessons. He's talking about the scripture, the Third Testament, the First Testament. He's talking about the scripture. He's talking about all of the scripture. May even affirm that the doctrine does not lead to the same end as the teachings of Jesus. But they're saying that Jesus taught something different. Jesus taught something is what they're saying. He says spirits blinded by misinterpretations. Of course, interpretations. The world's full of those. Or confused by religious fanaticism. That means that's what they're saying when one church believes that they're the only church that's going to survive. One group says, we're the only ones going to heaven and everybody else is not. Like a Baptist will say that a Methodist or anybody else is not, something like that. But must travel a road of trials. Okay, trials is in Persians. One guy I'm communicating with out there in California, he was in a car wreck, and pretty much that was the beginning of his trials, and he has now, his materialism is going, quit themselves of materialism that prevents them from understanding and complying with with my precept that teaches you to love one another. So he was riding around in his car, everything was fine, he was into his selfishness and materialism. All of a sudden his materialism started going away, and he's talking about how he could do stuff for others and how he can be more connected with the Father and such, and that's what it's all about. One way or another we're going to get stripped of such. I have told you, beloved Israel, that the time shall come when the fake spokesman arise to give access to the false Jesus. Talking about in the end times, everybody going to say that I am a Christ, and you're going to be false teachers around. He says, and within their materialism, they will deceive, saying that through them the master speaks, meaning they put on all of these big fabulous garments and these big hats that says I am God, and they get behind all of this extravagant avulance and just all of this hoopla with all of this stuff, and that's what tells the world, and they have billions and billions of people convinced. That's what tells the world that materialism is that they are the chosen one, that they are the spokesman for the Father, that's what, that's who he sent. They use the materialism to do that, and they do a good job of it. Right? False prophets and false soldiers shall arise in their word and their materialism, and with their word and their materialism seek to turn you from the road of light and truth. Right? False guides, false prophets, and false soldiers. Who are the false soldiers? You know who the false soldiers are, Stan? Yeah, you have to know who the soldiers are. I found out yesterday who the soldiers are in the book of Dead Sea Scrolls. Levi. The Levi. The false Levi's. The false. So you have false, but it says right there, same thing. False guides, the same. False guides, false prophets, false soldiers shall arise. Well, the reason I got there about the Levi's being the thing is because on their trumpet you're supposed to write the army of God. So they're the Levi are the army, and so since they're the army, then they are the soldiers. But anyway, materialism. The false soldiers shall arise, and with their word and their materialism seek to turn you from the road of light and truth. Right? You know, how many people are out there right now serving, anyway, let's go on. While the beings of light, elevated by the ideal of love, harmony, and peace and perfection, go spreading light upon the path of mankind, spreading light is understanding. These people who have understanding, they are beings of light, meaning they have understanding. They are spreading this understanding. They're teaching. That's what he's talking about. Inspiring them always to the good. They're teaching them about the law and what it means to walk with the Father. And revealing all that it is good of man, and being that still, my wife looked up, I guess she was waiting for me to expound on that, revealing all that is good for the good of man. Yeah, I read it wrong, it didn't make sense. And revealing all that is for the good of men, the beings that still retain the materialism of the earth, who have not been able to quit themselves of their selfishness and their love of the world, or who for an infinite time ponder to the human inclinations and tendencies, are those who sow confusion on the path of humanity, clouding the minds, blinding hearts, and enslaving wills to take advantage of men, converting them into instruments of their plans and taking them as though their bodies were their own. They're using materialism to enslave you and then kill you. That's what it just said. That's a whole lot of words, but that's what he said. Golly, guys, is it that important? I mean, it's talking about our stuff here, widgets and whatnot. I guess so. Let's go on. Talking about greed and materialism, let's see what it says. Since the first times I have seen men taking their lives because of greed. I have seen men taking their lives because of greed. They ain't talking about people killing themselves. Because of greed, materialism, and lust of power, they have always neglected their spirit, believing themselves only flesh, and when the time has come to leave their human form on earth, only what they did in their physical life remained, without gathering any glory for the spirit, because they did not seek it, they did not think about it, nor were they concerned with the virtues of the spirit or its knowledge. Materialism. They thought about materialism, they didn't think about nothing else. Spirit world, nothing. And so when they was faced with the option of now living a life where their materialism was reduced to a level that they thought was not acceptable, they killed themselves. They thought they was going to lose their business. They thought they was going to lose their bank account. Stock market crashed. They jumped out the window. Now, the time of atonement and purification is brief for he who sees his trials with spirituality. Right? Why? I mean, this reminds me of Hermas. Remember Hermas said when he was talking about the beast there in chapter 4, and the beast came and, he found out that the beast wasn't that big a deal?
Right.
Well, it says right here, listen to it again. It says the time of atonement, that's the tribulation. And, I'm just thinking about that, yeah. Atonement is the tribulation, but the atonement ain't going to last just one day. It's actually 7 years probably. And because the purification is 7 years. Atonement and purification is brief for he who sees his trials with spirituality. So that's saying if you see it as you're being separated from your materialism so that you can grow spiritually, then it won't seem so long and hard and tough. It'll be brief. Yet for those enveloped in materialism, that which in truth passes quickly shall go slowly, meaning they're going to be agonizing over the stuff. There's only going to be one the period of purification is going to last for a long period of time, but the events themselves, like the earthquakes last for minutes. It will have to struggle. That's what it's talking about. It shall have to struggle against the religious fanaticism that prevents it from knowing the truth. Talking about our spirit is what it's talking about. It will have to struggle against the fanaticism that makes it think that all marches toward the final destruction from which none can be saved. And let me make sure it's talking about the spirit. The humanity must, oh, it's talking about humanity. This humanity, yeah. Then this humanity will have to struggle against the fanaticism that makes it think that all marches towards a final destruction from which none can be saved. And it must struggle against the materialism that makes it seek only fleeting pleasures, the joys of the senses that tumble the spirit into an abyss of vice, pain, desperation, and darkness. Materialism is a bad boy. Right? All of humanity is struggling against materialism that's making you want to seek. All thing humanity looks out for is fleeting pleasures, joys of the senses that tumble the spirit into an abyss of. Okay, so those two things, fleeting pleasures and joys of the senses. And then, and when we get those things, it pushes our spirit into an abyss of vice, pain, desperation, and darkness. Materialism is a bad boy. All right, y'all, and this is where we started off from, materialism and spiritualization. All right, we're going to go ahead and we're going to do some editing on this one. All right, praise you, Lord. Hermes Academy. Power, patience, continence, and faith. We teach virtue.